Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Digital and Innovative SME Financing Solutions session. Moderated by Olena Gryniuk, CEE Regional Director, SME Banking Club. With the participation of Karol Leszczyński, Product Development Manager for Factoring Comarch SA. Katalin Kauzli, Co-founder, Partnerhub ZRT. Yaroslav Dubov, CEO and founder, Ninja Lender.
Good afternoon. We have made some changes on the stage setup, so now the moderator and the next moderator, I hope as well, will be sitting here on the left. So, we should be ready for changes, always. So, during this panel, we will discuss what are the new approaches to the SME finance. So, new approaches, how to accelerate the finance to micros and small businesses. We always at the SME Banking Club and here also today during the first half of today's conference, we talked about that the digitalization and automation actually is the tool that allows to accelerate the access to SME finance and cover especially micro segment with the financial services. And I would like to actually lead today's discussion towards the digital tool and also the usage of data to accelerate SME finance. And let's start our panel. I have a brilliant panelists today. All of them bring influence and much impact, I would say, into actually accelerating access to SME finance, each of them from their field. Karol is, I would say, is an ambassador for the factoring in cloud. Katalin is the ambassador of the e-invoicing integrated into the financial services for business customers. And Yaroslav is the ambassador here in the region of the giving a new chance through the rejected SME loans. So I would suggest and ask to speak and to introduce yourself, to tell our audience a little bit more about you and what you are doing, and then we start the discussion. So, Yaroslav, let's start from you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure of being here. Let me check if I can use my slides here. Maybe
can we have the slides,
slides,
please? Yes.
So we provide a solution for loan applications that got rejected. And the problem is very huge. So what we did is a B2B platform to collect, analyze, and match applications that got rejected. And in this way, we give a new chance for these applications and help customers to obtain financing. It's a B2B2C platform, so the idea is to collect data from banks and financial institutions. We also have web applications to interact with borrowers. Of course, the data is protected, it's GDPR compliance and free of charge for borrowers. And among our advantages that we can provide our partners with verified data, we support any loan type, and we help applicants with improving their applications. And we made a survey in Poland with borrowers rejected by banks within the last 5 years, and 74% of them like the idea of Ninja Lender, and 71% would allow to transfer the data to our platform. So this solution is likable by borrowers. And this is some of our awards. Thank you.
No, it doesn't work.
Can I have a clicker? Yeah. So, yes. Welcome everyone. My name is Katalin Kauzli. I am a co-founder at Partnerhub. Partnerhub helps banks and financial service providers to orchestrate and participate in open finance and open data ecosystems by integrating financial services and e-invoicing. What does it mean in practice? We have a technology which is a white label solution. It's a low-code, no-code technology with which anyone can set up their own digital invoice management solutions. And we also think that invoicing, e-invoicing should be integrated with financial services, because once an invoice is created, in the future it will be either paid at some point from own sources or from some finance sources. So we will have the data from e-invoicing, because e-invoicing is coming worldwide, so we will have the structured and standardized invoice data. The banks already starting working on standardizing their own data structures themselves, and it just makes perfect sense to connect these data sources. So our solutions, we have three use cases. One of them is a value-added service for SME customers, when the bank can set up dedicated SME banking portals, also having the traditional or core banking products, but enriched with digital invoice management. So the SMEs can issue invoices, but also receive, process, and pay invoices. And I'm looking forward to the moment when you will have the button, I will be able to finance this invoice. So that is one use case. As instant payments, real-time payments are coming to live in more and more countries and legislations, it also makes sense to integrate the invoice data that the invoice issuers have with the request to pay service. So this is another use case that we are putting together, and as invoices are not only issued, but they are also received not only by businesses but also consumers, then we can provide the technology to set up the invoice presentment and payment layer to banks and financial service providers. Yeah. Just a couple of examples with whom we have already worked. So we have on board the two largest banks in Hungary. They have set up these value-added SME banking services, and I think we will discuss later about, or I will have the opportunity to discuss Hungary's situation and the digitalization of SME financial services in Hungary. And we are also working on such a project with Banca Transilvania, which is the largest bank in Romania and heavily SME focused. So that's us.
Microphone.
Yeah.
It's working right now. Hello, everyone. My name is Karol Leszczyński. I'm product development manager at Comarch. I'm responsible for Comarch factoring platform. What we do at Comarch, we are a software house from Poland. We provide software for different sectors, like, for example, financial sector, of course, which I'm connected to, like factoring, banking industry, insurance, credit loan origination, and more. We also cover healthcare, airlines, administration, public administration. I held about 10 years experience working in banking industry at this time in Poland at Raiffeisenbank Polska, Raiffeisenbank Poland, mainly in factoring, as a head of sales of factoring on 3 regions. And since 3.5 years, I'm working at Comarch. And my main task is to make this product as user-friendly and catch all the requirements from the market to make it as user-friendly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let's start the discussion, and I do invite our online attendees and here our participants present in the room to be active and participate in the discussion. Please ask your questions. Let's start probably from the overview of the markets that all of you are working at. We do notice, right, that what we call the alternative finance, like that, not, I mean, the financial products beyond the traditional banking loans, is becoming, in some of the cases, in some of the countries, like the real one financial tool at the moment for micros and SME customers. We do see the factoring developing, we do see the fintechs appearing in the Central European markets, at least covering the factoring and invoice finance and non-lenders, non-banking lenders as well. So let's start, Karol, from you, and then Katalin and Yaroslav. How do you see actually the path of the digitalization of financial service, of all financial services for the micros and SME in the region you work? So mainly Poland, maybe Karol in UK, some other countries as well, if you can.
Yes, this is a very good question. Thank you. When I think about Poland and about the situation of digitalization of the factoring industry, in my case, I think the pandemic helped because before that we weren't able to do many things in the bank. For example, like opening a bank account from the internet, you needed to go to the financial branch or financial institution building to do that. And suddenly when it happened and we are locked down in our houses, in our homes, suddenly it became possible. So there was a joke that the pandemic was the biggest digitalization answer for all of us. Yeah?
Right.
And when I think about the SMEs, from the factoring point of view, I think they are covered quite well, but not mainly in the digital way, because only few of the players on the Polish market provides the digital factoring without possibility to go to the financial institution. And the best on the markets are able to, for example, grant the decision in less than 8 seconds. So it's just phenomenal right now. So all you need to do is fulfill the online application, and after a few seconds you have the decision or not. But when I think about it, we need to also understand that right now fintechs showed the great way, the great path for the traditional financial institutions. But at this point, I think they are able to grant this decision much more faster because the limits are significantly lower than the limits for the corporate client, for example. Because as I see the market, they are granting, for example, 50,000 euro, maybe 100,000 euro of the limits. Of course, corporate clients usually needs more, but we need to also see that I think the corporate client understand that, and they don't want to have this fast decision because they understand the issues, because 10 million euro, it's not 50,000 euro. They understand that. But what worries me the most is that micro companies aren't covered by factoring at all, because most of the banks still have traditional granting decision limits. So the decision for 50,000 euro is as long as for 10 million euro, and the profitability is much more different. So I think this is the work they need to do, because and I think the fintechs covered this segment very well, and they also did a great educational job, because many of those clients didn't understand what factoring is, and thanks to them, they understand right now. And at some point of these micro companies, they will grow up, then will go further. For example, for the traditional banks, maybe for traditional factors. So I think the cooperation with fintechs in this case, they covered the segment that the banks truly didn't want to cover at some point. So that's my point of view of the market at Poland, factoring industry.
So if maybe to give some background, that in Poland, the factoring market is really growing year by year, starting from the actual COVID time, like 20 or 30% yearly growth. And yes, the crisis was actually one of the pushes to enlarge the factoring portfolios and number of finance invoiced. But also, again, when the banks, one of the reasons for SME, if we watch it at SME and micros, was because banks restricted their credit policies again, and the only tool available on the market was the invoice finance or factoring. And yes, there are some examples. You really can upload the invoice and get the decision within seconds.
Yes, and there are estimations that, for example, in 2021, the global turnover of factoring volume was about 3 trillion euro. I don't have the data from the 2022, but I spoke with the chairman of FCI, and he told me that the estimations are about 15 to 20% of growth. And by the end of 2030, it will be almost doubled, over the 6 trillion euros. So I think there is a big piece of cake to take from there.
Yeah. Katalin, what about Hungary?
Yeah, so Hungary is more like a bank-dominated market from a perspective of financial services. We have, of course, factoring companies, but there are, I think, 6, 7 big and mid-sized banks who provide financial services for all customers. And I would divide like financing and payment services. I think on the payment side, the digitalization was quite early in Hungary. We started in terms of the SME sector, so we started the OTP EBIS solution, which is this value-added SME banking, back in 2016. The product was launched in 2017. It was I think one of the first cloud-based solutions in the banking industry worldwide. They realized that the SME sector was quite competitive in terms of pricing, and they wanted to provide value-added services, and they arrived to the point that, okay, what can we provide to SME customers? And obviously, invoicing is an answer and is a good answer. So that was the driver force of behind launching that solution. And 2 years later, Budapest Bank, now Hungarian bank holding, followed. So the services are there. The penetration could be obviously higher, but it's available to all SMEs. So I think, before this project, OTP Bank also already started the digital onboarding back in 2016, which I think was, again, a quite early thing to do. So services are there, they are available. That is the, I would say, onboarding value-added services side. On the other hand, I think the factoring is not that rosy picture. We have, I think, one small fintech who provides the digital factoring. So in the end, the risk management, so it's a bank-backed solution, so the risk approval happens in the bank. So when we ourselves wanted to apply for factoring, we ended up giving up the process because it took a month. And last week we had a webinar on factoring. And again, from a personal experience, we did 2 factoring applications in Hungary. One of them was a bank-backed solution. The other one was an independent. And the onboarding process is still paper-based. And I think it's already over 1 month, so we couldn't complete the process. So the digitalization from the factoring is still missing, despite the fact that the invoicing and invoice data is already there in Hungary, because there is a continuous transaction control introduced since 2018. So the possibility is there. What I know that the factoring software provider already uses the invoice data that you can get from the tax authority, but yeah, so I think there is still room for improvement on this side.
Yeah, let's discuss it in detail a little bit later. But if we talk about the invoicing, and it's becoming mandatory in the next several years in the European Union countries and outside as well, this is becoming a competitive advantage for the banks to implement such a tool for SMEs, because they should have it. I mean, if they haven't used it till that time, they should choose the e-invoicing provider. Of course, the better it should be integrated with the payments, right? So with the banking account and the, not to do the manual transactions with copying and manual inputting of the transaction data to do the payment for the invoices received. Like when we have in Central Eastern the situation that 80% or even more of the banks digitalized all traditional daily banking services, so that there is no difference which banking application of which bank you use as an SME customer, implementing such services as e-invoicing online account, so creating kind of ecosystem is becoming a competitive advantage on the market, because this is what starts to differentiate you as a bank or as a financial institution on the market. Yaroslav, what is your vision on the market? You work on Polish market as well, but in different areas.
I would say that changes is happening, sometimes slow, sometimes fast. There are different types of players on the market, like traditional players, which are slow, and new, like commerce, that are challenging them. And this is the drive innovations, of course. But I see it positively. So anyway, it became easier to open an account and manage your account, apply for a loan. Of course, it could be better, as usual, but in general, I see it positively.
All right. Yeah, so if we look at the Central Eastern European market, the 30% of the banks and financial institutions digitalize at least partially the SME finance process. So whether there is an online or mobile application for a loan, for a factoring, or they should apply online but sign the agreement and receive the decision remotely, or they have a fully digital process. With the best example, as Karol mentioned, with 8 seconds of the decision. So let's come back to the details. I would say if I maybe start from you, Katalin, I wanted for us to discuss in detail this invoicing becoming mandatory in the European Union and how because we see it as a new approach, as a new tool, as a new data source to actually finance these invoices, right? Which is crucial for SMEs, because the liquidity is the blood for the SMEs more than for the corporations. So tell us more on that and your vision, how it matches the financial side.
Yes, so as many of you are aware in this room, that the invoicing regulations are either coming or it's already there. In Greece, it's already here, so you are familiar with it. In Italy, it's already there. It's coming, in Poland, it's coming in Serbia, so it's coming all over. And the good thing about invoicing and invoice data as a structured data, I would give you a comparison. So if you are going anywhere in Europe, then you don't have to think about what kind of plug you take with you, because you just put it into the socket. And this is true for invoicing. So if you have the structured and standardized invoice data, then you don't need to think about, okay, what do I need to do with it? Do I need to deal with several formats? Because the invoicing regulations bring disadvantage to all of the markets, that an invoice will look like at least very similar in each country of the European Union. And if you have this structured invoice data and you want to use it for payments or your financial services, then it will be easier for everyone who wants to use that data. Why it's important to have this? Because going back to the plug and socket example, you don't need to buy a converter, you don't need to do the additional investment of putting your data structure into another standardized data structure. You just use it as it is. And this can accelerate really the digitalization of financial services, because invoice data is a representation of a business transaction. And the payment is also a representation of another part of the business transaction, but the invoice data has everything or has everything for payments and a lot of things or most of the things for invoice financing. And you can just simply use what is already available, and you need to start working or cooking with what is already there.
Yeah, and in addition to that, if this is checked, because it is, I mean, in the compliance point of view, from the governmental point of view, this is of course due to the tax checks and VAT checks and regulations, right? And if tax authority kind of check this data, right, then it means that the risk that the invoice is fake or the
Yes, exactly.
The frauds, yes. Yeah. So the risk of fraud is less.
Yes, so the invoicing regulations are pushed by the tax authorities mainly from a VAT gap decreasing perspective. So the first or the most important factor in introducing the e-invoicing was not to provide the businesses the efficiency gains, but first of all to realize the VAT revenues for all countries. And there are different schemes in various countries, and one of them, which Olena mentioned, also ensures that if you as a business issue an invoice and submit it to the tax authority will approve the invoice before it is even issued. And then you can be sure on the financing side that the tax authority approved it. However, if the tax authority does not have this approach, it is still less likely, because there are other security protocols attached to issuing an actual invoice, that you can check that the content was not compromised before the issuance of the invoice, so that can be already checked. In the e-invoicing part, so a business transaction can be still in itself fraudulent or not arm's length, but you can be at least sure on the invoice issuance side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it makes possible, maybe not only that, but the example that you mentioned and that I actually like the most, and we do have some examples of such invoice finance in Poland. So when you issue the invoice in your e-invoicing tool, let's say, and it is great when this is in the ecosystems of the bank, let's say, because it makes it easy. But you know, in terms, I think that in terms of mandatory invoicing, that you can access invoice data as well, even not, you know, having this invoice data inside the ecosystem. So you can just really, you issue the invoice as a customer, and there is a button. Do you want to finance this invoice, or do you want to, you know, get the money for this invoice right now? You just click the button, and this is the very right moment and the very right approach to sell invoice finance, right? So event-based. This is the SME issued the invoice, knowing that the counterparty will pay in 2 weeks. And maybe will delay even. So yeah, I want to get finance now. I just click, and based on the invoice data, on transaction data as well, that are available again, even not within the bank, but with the PSD2, we can get it, right? So it can simplify and automate the decision very, very much. Right, Karol, yeah, let's.
And I think it's also worth to mention that, from my point of view, as a factoring specialist, for our industry, it's also very good solution. But in Poland, for instance, they postponed launching invoices 2 times already. Right now it's in the second half of 2024. In Poland we call it KSEF, which means Krajowy System Elektronicznych Faktur. It's a little bit hard to pronounce. But for me, from my point of view, for the end users, when we as a software provider, we only send a request to the governmental system, and we will have the access for all the invoices. So end user of factoring agreement will have all his invoices automatically uploaded in the system. And all he needs to do is only to decide how much money he will want. So from the end user perspective, of course, it's a great solution. And from the financial institution perspective, the safety, because the reduction of frauds will be very big in my opinion. So I see only positive things about the invoicing in Poland, and I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. Coming back to factoring, continuing the topic of factoring, what, Karol, do you see the other drivers except the e-invoicing data that will be driving the development of the factoring in the region?
I think the embedded finance will be the good answer here. And referring to the factoring, the way sort of embedded finance here is, for example, to cooperation with insurance company, because we are able to provide the cooperation to insure your invoices. And if I'm the end user, if I'm the entrepreneur, knowing the prices, because factoring and insurance is a little bit more expensive, but why should I care about my debtor's problem? Let's make the insurance company care about it, because using it that way, all I get is I'm paying for a good night's sleep. Yeah? Because if the debtor has a problem, I will have the information from the insurance company. Of course, as I was speaking with the companies, they told me that this is the bad news for us, because we will not have our debtor, his invoices financed. But if you look at the other way, the bad news is in this case the good news, because in this case you will not lose your money, because we are speaking about money here. Yeah? So for me, I think the cooperations with insurance company would be much more appreciated by the end users than the entrepreneurs, because they understand the benefits of cooperation with insurance company, because the decisions are very fast, the limits are good enough for them. Of course, if they had this bad information, they still can sell the goods for the debtor, but it's on their own risk. So I think this is something that will be expected, and I think the most expected thing will be the real-time decision in this case, if I may add one point here. And I would like to refer to my personal life here, and to change industry, because I have two young daughters, 5-year-old Alicia and 2-year-old Caroline, and I was speaking with my daughter a few days ago. She's watching Netflix. She's kids, so she's watching Netflix cartoons, yeah? And there was a problem for uploading, because it's usually you choose the cartoon, it's running, yeah? And there was some internet issue here. And she needed to wait for about 10 seconds to upload this cartoon, 10 seconds, and she couldn't stand it. She couldn't stand waiting 10 seconds for cartoon. So what I think about now, 10 years from now, I think she will enter the banking industry. She will go to the bank, she will try to open maybe her first account, and 10 years, maybe 20 years from now, she will want to her first maybe financial product, yeah? And I'm 100% sure that she will never enter, my daughters, they will never enter financial building in their entire life. They will do everything online. And we need to be ready for this, because I remember Piotr saying at the opening remark that we need to remember about the, maybe not old-fashioned client, but all kind of clients. But what I think right now, the youngsters, the new generations, they are coming by storm. And we also need to be ready for them, because you have my word, they will never enter financial institution building in their life.
Maybe in virtual reality.
They will do everything online, of course. They will do everything online, yeah.
Yeah, if I may add to this. So I think other data sources that are already there and available, so open data is a big help in accelerating factoring. Also the digital identification of natural persons and the companies is already there. So there are already third-party tax data is there. So already third-party data sources that can also make it easier to set up digital invoice financing solution and can make the real-time credit scoring also happen. So yeah, so that's what I see. And it's not in the future; it's here. You just need to use the already available things and technologies, and that is the point where I see the bottleneck too. So everything is there. It's just
but still,
service providers still
there.
Need
there
to
is
catch
from
up
the market,
with,
product,
with implementing these already available technologies.
Turning back, Karol, to your answer regarding the real-time decisions and real-time finance, also what is coming into my mind, and one of the trends, maybe not the trends, the customer segments that are developing and growing are the digital nomads, and we also should take into consideration that this number is increasing, and I read the statistics somewhere that in 2030 it will be kind of 1/4 of the population of the Earth. It means that who are the digital nomads? So they are the entrepreneurs and the employees that are working remotely from different places. They are not attached to any concrete place. They do not have mortgages. They do not have real estate. They do not have a postal address. So they are everywhere. So they could be every month in different places, and this definitely should change. I mean, they will need other products than the financial institutions are offering right now. It should be real time, it should be digital, it should be not attached to any physical assets because they just don't have it. And yes, and especially if you are micro and SME, you did your job, you issued the invoice, you should pay now. You want to be paid now because you live now. You need to pay for school, for kindergarten, you need to eat now, not in 2 weeks when the counterparty will pay you, right? So, yeah, so this is it. I would like Yaroslav to come to you because you have a unique solution here on the whole European market, I would say. So let's talk about the rejected SME loans. I saw in your presentation actually that there is, I mean, again, we see that there is a great potential, right? So there is a great need. You stated that it was up to 41 trillion euro rejected loans, right? So it sounds like a huge opportunity for an alternative lender to cover these customers. So let's talk about first of all, the opportunities and what are probably the prerequisites on the market for, for financing such rejected loans as you offer. And in the next question, let's talk about the challenges, because I know there are.
Okay, so the basic idea of Ninja Lender is to connect rejected customer with alternative institution. It could be a bank or a non-banking company. Mm-hmm. So in this way, we aim to help a borrower to obtain financing. Of course, it's important. The market potential is really huge. Of course, not every borrower is a good borrower. Of course, there are some borrowers that deep indebtedness or they have very bad credit history. They have 10 active loans. Mm-hmm. So it's not a good idea to help them. Mm-hmm. But actually, we see that maybe 20-30% of those rejected customers can get financing. Mm-hmm. And also we made another survey and we found out that about 50% of applicants actually managed to find a financing after they got rejected. Of course, they spent some time and efforts, but they did this. So of course, our idea is to simplify life for everyone. So it's a win-win situation for everyone. So the idea that if you applied for a loan and you got rejected, we can get this application to our platform, analyze this data, and send this data to one of our partners, and you will get an offer. Good or bad, you will decide. So, of course, it's worth to try. Mm-hmm. But there are some challenges we can discuss later. Yeah. And the amount of applications is very huge. So there are more than 1 billion rejected loans per year globally. And if you're talking about Poland, the rejected volume for consumer loans only is more than 100 billion euros. Yeah. So there is a huge potential in this.
How does it work now?
Well, we are testing this solution with 2 banks, 2 lending companies, and a comparison platform in Poland. So I will tell you in half a year about the results.
All right, all right. So what is the main challenge?
There are a few of them actually,
Alright.
because our main idea is to cooperate with big banks, because they cover 90-something% of the market, but they are quite conservative. I mean, they hold and manage the capital, so they can afford themselves to be slow. And we are we are forcing them to speed up innovations and say, let's help, but they are afraid of different things. So our job is to convince them. And for example, there are 500 small banks in Poland that are more open for cooperation. So our strategy is to start with small banks, and then it will be a good example for big banks to join the platform. And also one of the advantages of the platform that we can work with any loan types. So in the future we would like to extend the usage of the platform.
So what you are saying is that this voluntarily, let's say, referring the rejected loans to some other alternative providers doesn't work quite fast or quite well, let's say. We do see the example of the UK when they started actually the process of legislation or creation the legislation and regulation for the banks to make it mandatory that they should transfer rejected SME loans to the alternative lenders. So, so do you think this is the main driver that can, make the banks really refer these loans?
I think that this would definitely help a lot.
Of course.
And they started in the UK, in 2013. So they spent some time on the research. They made a comprehensive research and discovered the opportunities. They spent a couple of years on creating the rules, the law basis. And from 2016 it works there, so for more than 6 years. And yes, I would like to make an official request to the EIB Institute to make this kind of the research in the EU to show everyone that this is important and we can actually increase the efficiency of the lending process.
All right. Do we have some questions in the audience?
I would like to add
Sure.
something to Yaroslav. I think you did a tremendous job with this solution. I'm really a big fan of it, and I hope it will launch. You will start to cooperate with the big banks. I don't know the process. For example, if you are sharing the profit from the granted limit.
What is the motivation actually now?
Yeah,
the
because
banks
that's my question. What's the
refer-
motivation for the banks to cooperate? At the end, because the solution is great in my opinion.
Well, there are a few benefits for banks. One of them, they can increase the customer loyalty for those who got rejected, because by providing an alternative solution, you always showing your willingness to help, right? So it's not just, we cannot give you money. Yes,
goodbye.
you have to deal with this by yourself. And the second one, there is a financial benefit, because the institution that will send data to us will get paid for this data, and the institution that will get this data and issue a loan will pay. So, and we will take a brokerage. That's how it works. So, yeah. And also one of the benefits that the institution that will sell data to us will know that, let's say, this borrower who got rejected got financing. So, let's say in half a year, it works to reach out to the customer and say, hi, how are you doing there?
All right, all right. We have a question from Mikhail for Yaroslav. If the main bank is not in position to lend it to the customer, how does the company manage to do so based on trust and the ability to repay?
Let me check again.
So if the main bank, if the bank refuses, right, a loan, to the customer. So how does the company, I think the alternative lender, manage to finance this loan?
Well, every institution has its own risk model and scoring system.
The risk appetite, right?
Well, some have, I mean, different institutions, they have different risk, like appetite. And also, like banks and non-banking companies, they use different approaches. So I would say, like if you're talking about individual loans, then like, I know many people actually, and also my colleague, who went to his bank, applied for a loan, got rejected, like, despite his bank has every data. Next day he went to another bank and he got financed. Mm-hmm. So it's a good question how it works, why one bank rejects, another one accepts, but that's how it is.
Yeah, yeah.
If I may add to this, again on the invoice data side, I would encourage everyone, and this is something that we would also like to pursue, to use the invoice data in risk models as well, because it's the granular data about the transactions and all the transactions of a company, and you will have much more and much more accurate risk models if you use better quality data. So today, I think only 14% of SME financing needs are met. I just made a small calculation. And I think if you start using invoice data in risk models and other structured data in risk models, then you can easily double it. So you can double your business by I wouldn't say minor, but with like investments that are not so significant. Mm-hmm. So I see just a tremendous growth here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I would like to add something, because I remember working in the banking industry, and the main problem was getting a new client because there was no behavioral data in the systems, for example, in our bank. And the rating at the beginning was lower, was worse than the rating of the client that, for example, was banking with us, for example, sending salaries, paying taxes. So I think this is also a challenge from the risk point of view to see the rating, to set the rating without the behavioral data, because I think it was about 30 to 40% of weight of the rating score at the end. So I think it's also a big issue here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, I don't know how much time left till the end of the panel. All right, we have 2 minutes, great. So then one final question from my side. As we all discussed here, so there is a need on the market. So there is a need from the micro and SME customer side, because they're not covered with the finance, so they need the finance from the financial institutions. We have technical solutions and technical IT providers that are ready to provide the technology, right, to digitalize and automate the process, the decision. We have more and more data available on the market that can be used in the credit decision process. Right? The other question is that this is still, we do see the problems even if the financial institutions have the ecosystem and have all the data on the customer, like with the online accounting, all the financial data, all invoicing data, all transactional data, still they cannot centralize this data and really make it work for the decision-making process. What is, on your opinion, needed? What's stuck here? Because like we have the need, we have the tools to do this, but we still do not have enough financial products available on the market for micros and SMEs. Still, we discussed that the access to SME finance is still limited, and this is another year we discuss it, and no new solutions, or not new, but the dynamics of the increase of such a solution is still lower than the need for that. How do you see, what is the main challenge here, and how actually can banks and financial institutions in general, alternative lenders as well, embrace that? Karol, let's start from you.
I think make a closing remark. I think it's the mindset of the CEOs of the traditional financial institutions, because, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think they understand what will the future brings, what the new generation will expect, and. I was speaking, I think, in Sweden on some conference, and I spoke with the guy from the big bank from the Nordea, from the Norwegian region, and he told me that he still believes that most of the clients want to go to the bank and shake the hand. Yeah, maybe, but in a few years from now, it won't happen. Trust me, it won't happen.
Katalin, what do you think?
I think besides the mindset change is that how banks and financial institutions are able to manage their own internal data sources and also third-party data sources. So from an internal perspective, a lot of banks are going through core banking system changes. So that would definitely help, because then it's easier for them also to more flexibly manage the data. And the other thing is that you cannot keep everything in-house, then you need to integrate with other third-party solutions or data sources. And that is also difficult if you don't have the standardized interfaces. Then you need to integrate one by one, and that slows down the process very much. So that is definitely a challenge.
Yep. Yaroslav.
In one word, this is a competition. From one side, it's the main driver of our life, but from another side, of course, it's preventing us from full cooperation, because we have to think about, okay, but yeah.
So let's be ready to changes and cooperation and openness. Thank you very much to my panel, Yaroslav, Katalin, and Karol. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.